Check. Oh, can you hear me in the back? Check. Wes, can you hear me? Oh, check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Wes, can you hear me back there? Matt, can you hear me? We good? All right. Got a full house tonight, or today rather, and want to get this thing going. I can't wait to hear from Stephen today. Really appreciate him taking the time to be here. He's a busy guy. Great to have some of the family. I hear this thing. Is it cutting out a little bit on me? Okay, good. Maybe it's just me. Great to have you. I know it sort of wasn't the best weekend if you're a Razorback fan or a Dallas Cowboy fan, but that's okay. We can live to play another day. We got a lot to be thankful for. We got a ton of special guests here today, so I want to go and get us started. So Gary Underwood, would you come up and lead us in a word of prayer? We don't see Gary. Even he's missing. Rex, would you like to? I will right now anoint you as the associate pastor of the Little Rock Touchdown Club. Go ahead.
All right.
Rex Nelson.
This will be a little different than the weekly recap, so would you bow your heads, please? Our dear Heavenly Father, thank you for being with us today. We have much to be thankful for at the Little Rock Touchdown Club. Thank you for our guests today. Thank you that Stephen was able to travel safely and be with us. We thank you that we can enjoy this great sport of football, that we have health in most of our lives, that we have families that support us and allow us to enjoy this club each Monday. Thank you again for the many blessings you have showered on us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Great job, Rex. Rex wearing a different hat today. Well done. Hey, I want to remind everybody, next week, Mac Brown. Wasn't it great? Even if, I know a lot of people in here hate Texas, but we were pulling for Charlie Strong because they need Arkansas. At least I was. Exactly right. So remember, next week is the James Street Award. That's why Mac Brown's coming in. Mac normally charges about $100,000 a speaking engagement at some of his corporate gigs. Because of the James Street Award. So what we're going to do, we're going to 14 high school kids from the 14 football players in Rock. And so we want you to come out, and then we'll have some of the Texas players. The Texas players have sponsored it. They're paying for all of it. They're paying for the plaques that we give to the players. These are all players, managers, kids that the high school coaches have nominated that are inspirational to their team. So come out last year was great, but having Mac Brown here, I think, will make it even better. Also, here we go. Check, check. Check, check, check. Much like the Razorback offense Saturday, just can't run the ball. Just can't do it. I love the way Matt Johnson with Matt Johnson Productions works so hard. I know. I'm just giving him a chance to get it. Is this thing ready to go?
Yeah.
There we go. How about that? Good job, Matt. There we go. Good job. There we go. Thank you very, very much. So anyway, we're going to see you here for the James Street Award next week. It's going to be a very neat deal to honor some special kids. The week after, hate to tell you this, but we're going back downtown for the Southwest Conference Hall of Fame induction. I'd hoped to have it here, but we did not get the what we needed here to get it done. So remember, Ken Hatfield, Chuck Dykes, Bill Burnett, Wayne Harris, Billy Ray Smith, Wayne Martin, Todd Day, Betty Fiskus. Is that right? Fiskus. That sounds like, no? Fiskus. I should know I played at the same time she did. We both did, Stephen. And the late Niall O'Shaughnessy, who just passed away. That's coming up in about 3 weeks, but it's going to be downtown. So go ahead and go to the Buzz website.
His birthday is tomorrow, but we're starting early. Let's hear it for David Basil.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Listen, once you get over 50, you stop counting these things. So as many of you in here know, thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Rex. Thank you, everybody. That's very kind of you. By the way, Hazel Thomas's birthday is tomorrow. She's one of our faithful members who's been around forever. Let's give a round of applause. Yeah. And then Stephen and Jerry Jr., if you would just let Jerry know tomorrow that it is his birthday too. So myself and Hazel and Jerry Jones share the same birthday. Little bit of difference in the numbers category in the bank, but that's okay. We love Jerry and wish him a happy birthday too. We'll remind everybody for pictures afterward with Steve. If you've got something autographed, just 2 autographs only. And remember, we got a lot of people that want to see him, and so where you're up here taking pictures, don't talk too long. I know it's great to see him, but remember there's other folks in line that want to visit with him as well. I do want to remind everybody to check out our awards that we present each year. They're all up here displayed for us to be proud of. And do want to thank our sponsors real quick. Twin City Limousine, Dale Bennett, Greg Hatcher, and Popeye. We appreciate them. Little Rock Convention and Visitor Bureau. I know David Russell's here today. David, thank you for your support, and we're proud to be the Little Rock Touchdown Club. 103.7 The Buzz, Steve Johnson, Justin Akery, thank you so much. CJRW, Richard McEwen, we're getting ready to crank up promotion for the Cliff Harris Award. I was telling Stephen about the starting cornerback for the New England Patriots, Butler, the kid who intercepted the pass last year to win the Super Bowl, Cliff Harris Award finalist. So great to see some of our guys who are nominated and winning getting to play on Sundays in the NFL. Epic Health, want to remind everybody, guys, go by and get your $1,600 free test that you can get to make sure that you are healthy, and do want to thank them for sponsoring the Sully Award. Glad to have them back as a sponsor this year. A new sponsor, Farm Bureau, Pulaski County. Shauna Hopper, Stephen Reichert, and all the guys over at Farm Bureau, Pulaski County. Make sure and give them some of your business if you can. Do want to thank Wendy's. Wendy's is a sponsor for our Willie Rofe Award and Dan Hampton Award. We really appreciate Nan Trammell. She's been a great supporter of ours for several years. Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings, Judy Henry does such a great job. 115-year-old law firm, 67 attorneys. Got offices in Rogers and Little Rock. So glad that you're representing me. I can't tell you how I can go to sleep at night knowing I've got somebody that's watching my back and is going to support me well in the courtroom, which is coming up. It's coming up. I just hope we get this done before the end of the year so I can get up here and do a touchdown dance when I win my court case. But thank you to Judy and Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings. Do want to thank also, too, Larry Crane, Crane Automotive. Larry has 13 dealerships across the state of Arkansas and employs more than 750 Arkansans and supports so many great causes. Larry, thank you so much for your sponsorship here today at the Touchdown Club and for the last few years. Drew Dees as well. It's great working with you guys. The Democrat Gazette, been with us since year one. Thank you to Wally Hall and Amanda Copley for their support. We'll have our Player of the Week here in just a minute. And Simmons Bank. We have nobody up here from Simmons Bank. You know why? Well, where you are, that's right, Rex is, it's a banking holiday. So, Stephen, how about that? If I'd have realized that, we'd have had somebody up here to sit with you. My apologies there. But we couldn't do what. I always use a good bank, yeah. That's exactly right. But great to have Simmons as our presenting sponsor. We couldn't do.
Hang on just a second, David. I'll give him a card.
Especially lately, Stephen says. But great to have the folks from Simmons be our presenting sponsor. We got some great sponsors. Let's give a round of applause to all of our great sponsors. You want to thank Matt Johnson, who does our AV stuff, does a great job. Dwayne Duncan does all our photography. Thank you, Dwayne. RJ Hawk does all of our social media. If you will go to at LR Touchdown Club is the Twitter account, so if you want to tweet out some things today from Stephen's speech. But thank you, RJ, for doing that. We really appreciate it. All of our wonderful check-in ladies and all the guys who help do all the seating before each meeting. We couldn't do it without you. Debbie Wyman, our executive director, works very hard. I mean, this is a packed room. I want everybody to look around. I mean, it is jam-packed. So we're really excited and appreciate everybody's effort to make this successful. It is time for our Democrat Gazette Player of the Week. His name is Brennan Johnson, and he is a senior quarterback at Pulaski Robinson. This was 2 weeks ago. He goes 12 of 16 for passing. 12 of 16 doesn't sound so great. 323 yards on those 12 completions, 27 yards per catch, 2 TDs. He rushed for 73 yards on 6 carries. That's 12 yards a carry and a touchdown. They won 40-7 over Dover last week. They won, I think, 55-0 this week. I think they're either number 1 or number 2. It's the best Pulaski Robinson team I can ever remember, and part of it is because of this young man. So let's give a Little Rock Touchdown Club welcome to Brennan Johnson, our Player of the Week. His coach here, Coach Reisner's here, and said that he's a great young man, been a 3-year starter. We appreciate, Coach, you being here. Tell Coach Escola we said hello. So his Ron B. Johnson, thank you so much for being here today. I know you're proud of him. He's a fine young man. Do want to thank Andrew Metters, too, for helping out today and getting Steve there. Andrew was sort of our conduit to connect with Charlotte last year, and Steve, I know they're longtime buddies and friends, so thank you there. And let me recognize a few guests real quick, if we will, before we do the weekend wrap-up. First, I want to thank Jeremy Muck of the Democrat Gazette for picking our players of the week every week. Robert Yates, as I mentioned earlier, thank you, Robert, for all your work with the James Street Award. Couldn't do it without you. Stephen Davenport and Jay Singleton, where are they at? Where are they at? They're with Supreme. Listen, he's wearing his Cowboys colors. These two guys are working on a project. I can't tell you about it right now, but it will be something I'll be able to show you in about 4 weeks or 5 weeks. But I appreciate the work they're doing, and it's sort of a secret deal, but we'll be showing that here to the club before too long. Kel Gober's here from the U of A Athletic Department. Kel, it's always great to have you here. I notice Troy Wells from Baptist, the new CEO of Baptist Health, is here. Great to have you. Troy's doing a great job. Replaced Russ Harrington, a longtime staple with Baptist. Also, Chad Kaufman, who is the president of Junior Achievement, and Philip Jett, who is the chair of the Legacy Luncheon, come up in April. Where are they at? Junior Achievement, thank you guys for being here. They're going to have a press conference right after this meeting to announce a big luncheon that is going to honor Stephen Jones, Keith Jackson, and another special guest that is here that we don't normally see basketball players in our midst, but we do today. The one and only, please welcome Sidney Moncrief. Sidney's take up. So if you want to stick around for that press conference, it's right after our meeting. I guess it's out here somewhere, Chad. Right? Diplomat room, to the side. So they'll be announcing that, but Stephen getting honored there, and Keith Jackson and Sidney for that. Also, Simmons Bank is getting honored that evening as well. That's April 26th. Also wanted to recognize the guy who started Junior Achievement in Arkansas 27 years ago, Sheffield Nelson. Sheffield is such an active person in the community. Great to have you and Mary Lynn here. Sheffield, it's always an honor. Our good friend Frank Fletcher and Judy Fletcher. All these folks are such good friends with the Jones family. Have been so close. They're here today. We want to make sure and acknowledge them. One of the best tennis players in the state is here today, and she's up possibly for the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame. I know a little bit about that organization. Stephen and I do, if we do say so ourselves. Paula Jewel Jones. Paula, let's give her a round of applause. When I lost my girlfriend not long ago, not only did I lose a girlfriend, but we lost a girl who was doing the books for the Touchdown Club. So I tell you, when it rains, it pours. No wonder you're in court. Yeah, Stephen said, no wonder you're in court. Yeah, promise you that did not had nothing to do with that. But anyway, where's Alan Klein at? Alan Klein, stand up. Alan is the new CPA for the Touchdown Club. Let's give him a round of applause. And he also went to junior high school with Stephen and was a Phi Delta with Stephen. So I thought that was a great connection. Wes Sutton connected me with him, so we appreciate that. Let me see. And I do want to mention Jerry Jones Jr. is here. Where's Jerry Jones? Let's give Jerry Jones Jr. a round of applause as well, too. Got a couple other comments before we bring up Stephen, but we got to have our weekend wrap-up. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rex Nelson, everybody.
Thanks, David. We're multitasking today, aren't we? I mean, I'm representing Simmons. Steve, my friend Bill Yee down here, we'll set you up with those new accounts right after the meeting. So you just see him. Also saying the prayer, but I did go to a Baptist college, so I can pray on order. Believe me, I just be glad I didn't ask for another verse of just as I am and ask for somebody to walk down front. The Baptists in the crowd get that. Yeah, just one more verse of that, just as I am. And my daddy used to look at his watch and he'd say, Cowboys are kicking off at noon. We got to stop this. We got to get home. No more just as I am. All right, let's get to it. College football. Well, the Arkansas defense did hang around for 3 quarters before a crowd of 101,821 in Tuscaloosa, but Alabama takes control late for the 27-14 victory. A Jake Coker to Calvin Ridley 81-yard touchdown pass combined with a failed fake punt attempt to propel the Tide finally in that game. Ridley, by the way, had 9 catches, 140 yards. Alabama outgained the Hogs 396 to 220. Alabama was held to its lowest point total of the year. If you're looking for that proverbial silver lining, the previous low was 34 points. Arkansas holds the Tide to 27. The Tide did end Alex Collins' streak of 350-yard rushing games. Collins had just 26 yards on 12 carries as Alabama outrushed Arkansas 134-44. Alabama has now scored, by the way, in 189 consecutive games. The Hogs' 7-3 halftime lead was their first halftime lead in 12 visits to Tuscaloosa. And now that most anticipated weekend of the Razorback season, the open date. So we'll go from there. Now, UCA is off to a 3-0 start in the Southland Conference. They beat Houston Baptist 43-7. In his second start at quarterback, the Bear quarterback Hayden Hildebrand threw for 4 touchdown passes. He passed for 274 yards. By the way, he's filling in for senior Taylor Reed out of El Dorado. Reed has a shoulder injury. The day in the Great American Conference, you remember I talked about the log jam last week. It started with 5 teams tied for the conference lead at 4-1. Henderson, Arkansas Tech, Harding, Ouachita, and East Central Oklahoma. Now there are just 2, Henderson and Arkansas Tech. Henderson beat Harding up in Searcy. Tech beat Ouachita and Russellville, and East Central lost at Southwestern Oklahoma. Harding had started the year 4-0. They went to number 12 nationally in NCAA Division II, but Harding has now lost on consecutive weekends to the Arkadelphia teams, Ouachita and Henderson. Henderson scored with less than 8 minutes remaining to come from behind and beat Harding 22-17 in a really good game. In Russellville, meanwhile, a Tech freshman named Brian Allen from Forest City rushed for 279 yards as the Wonder Boys beat Ouachita for the first time since 2007. Ouachita had been ranked number 20. They'll fall out of the rankings now. It was Tech's first win, by the way, over a nationally ranked opponent since the 2009 Division II playoffs. Southern Arkansas's 4-2, 38-20 over Oklahoma Baptist. Mule Riders had 378 yards of offense. They limited Oklahoma Baptist to 151 yards. And how about those Boll Weevils? UAM gets its first win of the season after an 0-5 start. Hunter Leppert passed for 398 yards as the Boll Weevils defeated 0-6 Southern Nazarene 51-10. Now, on to the SEC. Tennessee finally finds a way to win in the fourth quarter. As you know, they had been blowing games all year in the fourth quarter, but the Volunteers come from 21 points down in Knoxville to upset Georgia 38-31. Tennessee 3-3 overall, 1-2 in the conference. Georgia falls to 4-2 overall. You know, a lot of people had them already slated for that SEC championship game early. They're now 1-2 in the SEC, and Nick Chubb for the season to a knee injury on the first play. Still, though, Tennessee trailed 24-3 late in the first half. That was the third largest deficit ever overcome in the long history of Tennessee football. Joshua Dobbs threw for 312 yards. He ran for another 118. LSU gets to play at home due to all the flooding in South Carolina, and they take advantage of that unexpected home game to beat a really poor South Carolina team, frankly, 45-24. Leonard Fournette had his least productive game of the season, but he still gained 158 yards on 20 carries and played less than 3 quarters. He has now reached 1,000 yards in a season more quickly than any running back in LSU history, past Charles Alexander. Some of us old-timers will remember the guy they called Charles Great at LSU. So LSU's 5-0 overall, 3-0 in the conference. South Carolina giving the ball coach an old headache every week, 2-4 overall. They are 0-4 in the SEC. Florida, also undefeated, 6-0. 4-0 in the conference, following a 21-3 victory over Missouri and Columbia. The Gators had 337 yards. Missouri falls to 4-2 overall and only 1-2 in conference. Doesn't look like they're going to win the East for a third consecutive year. Get this, Missouri was only 1 of 13 on third downs, and they trailed in time of possession 37-53 to 22-07. So Florida just dominated the game. Ole Miss is 5-1, 52-3 over 0-5 New Mexico State in Oxford. Chad Kelly throwing for 384 yards and 3 touchdowns for the Rebels. Mississippi State 4-2, 45-17 over 1-4 Troy in Starkville. Dak Prescott did leave the game with a stomach ailment in the first quarter, but Nick Fitzgerald came in and made Troy want to throw up as he threw for 3 touchdown passes. And one more I got to give, Division III, Jim Rasco. Hendricks beats Birmingham Southern 21-16. Warriors are 4-1, and they're off to a 3-0 start in the conference. So congratulations to that program in only its 3rd season. All right, some great games this week. We've got Alabama going to Texas A&M. Aggies are undefeated. They've expanded their stadium. They'll have 102,000 there on Saturday, and they've had 2 weeks to get ready for this game. How many of you like A&M to beat Alabama in College Station? There's a few. How many of you like the Tide? Pretty overwhelming with the Tide. All right, Thursday night, we've got Auburn at Kentucky. Florida at LSU. 2 undefeateds. How many of you like Florida to go into Death Valley and win that football game? Yeah, not many. LSU? Pretty overwhelming. Alabama and LSU. Got Missouri at Georgia, Louisiana Tech at Mississippi State, Ole Miss at Memphis, and Memphis has got the best football team in a long time. That could be a trap game for the Rebels, and Vanderbilt is at South Carolina. Here in the state, huge showdown in the Southland Conference. McNeese State, UCA, both undefeated in conference. That's in Conway on Saturday. Alabama State's at UAPB, Henderson's at UAM, and Ouachita and Southern Arkansas play in the Murphy USA Classic in El Dorado. So games in Conway, Pine Bluff, Monticello, and El Dorado. Get out and see a college football game on Saturday. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Rex. I want to remind everybody now, unless you're doing social media, go ahead and turn off your phone or turn it to silent. Boy, last week with Jay Barker, there were a lot of phones going off there at the end, so you can hear it up here. So I'll just ask if you do that. I think we're getting a little interference somehow with the mic, so I think Matt's going to work on that, so I apologize for the problem there. Also, good to see Kanan Sandy, the #1 Razorback fan. Let's give him a round of applause right there. He is a mess. Jim Rasco, the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame historian, his official introduction of Stephen. And Stephen mentioned, too, by the way, he said, you know, sometimes we've run out of time and not had enough time for Q&A. Stephen thinks he's going to have time for Q&A, so be thinking of a question you might want to ask Stephen. But, you know, one of the great things about Stephen is that he and I were teammates together, and he was a little bit younger than me. But this is the great thing when I reflect on Stephen as a teammate. I had no clue who Jerry Jones was, and at that time, Jerry was just a gas guy. And to be quite honest with you, they didn't do a good job of educating us to the 64 national championship, and I wish they had. And the 69 team, they did a bad job of it. And I wish I had known more about your dad and the history there. And Steve never came off as a guy whose dad had had success. He was just like everybody else, and I always respected that now, knowing later, you know, who his family was and what they achieved. And, you know, it's hard to believe that Stephen has been in the NFL now for 26 years. I mean, that is remarkable. I will say this, is that just another reflection of my horrible dating skills, is that I did go out with his wife, Karen, one time. One time. And she knew that she could do a lot better. She obviously did. Matter of fact, she sees me. I usually see her at the game every once in a while. I'll say, hey, Karen, and I can see her thinking, man, did I make the right call there? But Stephen is a great dad. He was talking about his kids. I'm sure he'll talk about that. I did want to make mention, too, very involved in the community, both in Dallas and even here. We mentioned he's involved in this Junior Achievement, which is a great organization, which you'll hear more about in the press conference. And wanted to mention, too, I didn't know this, but Kel Gobert shared this with me. Stephen is the chair of the Never Yield Steering Committee, and that's a $213 million capital campaign for Razorback Athletics. And that's to work on a variety of things. And it's from 2012 to 2020. They've raised $126 million to date. And the biggest donation? From the Jones family. It was the Jerry and Jean Jones Family Student Athlete Success Center, which they hadn't had a chance to go in it, but I know you guys had the ribbon cutting for that. So, and I know, by the way, too, I hope a bomb doesn't go off in this building, because if I think about it, half the net worth of Arkansas is in this building right now. It's in this room. But I love a guy who gives back. And, you know, my friend A.B. Metters This was this week's Sports Business Journal, Family Ties. This is an article on Stephen and his success, and he's a well-respected guy in the league, and the fact that he's on the Rules Committee, which is probably the most important and powerful of all the committees that he could serve on. So, Stephen, I just want to say, I'm proud of what you've achieved and what your family's achieved and what you stand for, and it's great to see the success you've had. And even more so, he didn't have to take time to come to be here today. He's a busy guy. The fact that we had Charlotte, and I'll tell you, Charlotte set the bar high last year, brother. I'm just going to tell you. But I'm just proud to call you a friend and proud of all your success. And at this time, let's bring up Jim Rasco for an official introduction. Jim?
Okay, as all of you know, I like to stick to facts and figures in my introductions, but today I'm going to go way back in the life of our today's speaker and repeat a story that I've seen in print. It has nothing to do with facts and figures. After I tell the story, our speaker can nod affirmatively if the story is true, or he can shake his head vigorously no if the story is fictional. First part of the story is that when our speaker was in the 8th grade, he was suspended from school for 3 days after getting caught drinking beer. The second part is that after that happened, his dad drove him to the University of Arkansas campus and took him to the football stadium. Father explained to son, if you plan on playing football, you can't play if you associate in any way with alcohol. True or false? Okay, true stories. Now we'll go to the facts, other facts. Let's go to the annual publication known as Arkansas Football, the fall preview for 1982. Let's go to the high school section and look at the prospects for Little Rock's Catholic High. And I quote, Little Rock Catholic will open the 1982 season with experience at the skill positions, one of the state's top-rated quarterbacks, and a coach, Roy Davis, with high hopes. Star-spangled quarterback Stephen Jones, 6'2", 195 pounds, will direct the Rockets' offense for the 3rd consecutive season. Coach says he's a good competitor and has matured a lot. He bench presses 290. Now let's flip to page 143. I should have gotten this to Matt where he could blow it up. The All-Arkansas Super Team for 1982, that consisting of 7 linemen, 3 running backs, and 1 quarterback. The quarterback on the super team is Stephen Jones, Little Rock Catholic. The quote is as follows, Stephen is equally dangerous, operating through the air and on the ground, combining 4.6 speed with a powerful throwing arm. He's so powerful, in fact, that Coach Roy Davis says his biggest problem is throwing the ball too hard for our receivers to catch. In addition to his athletic ability, Stephen was a top student at Catholic, and his choice of colleges came down to Princeton or Arkansas. His parents leaned towards the Ivy League, but Stephen wanted to fulfill a boyhood ambition to play for the Razorbacks. Stephen was part of Lou Holt's last recruiting class at Arkansas. He came to Fayetteville in the fall of 1983, along with such other talented freshmen as Tony Cherico, James Shebest, and Chris Beckett. With Brad Taylor returning at quarterback for the 1983 season, Stephen redshirted and spent the year as a scout team quarterback. Then Ken Hatfield replaced Holtz at the end of the 1983 season and brought in his flexbone offense, featuring the need for a quarterback who was a strong runner. Stephen was more of a passer than a runner. So in the spring of 1984, Stephen moved to defense, and in the fall of 1984, as a redshirt freshman, Stephen was the number 2 rover behind senior Nathan Jones, who had already earned 3 varsity letters. That season, Stephen earned his first of 4 letters as a Razorback and played in his first of 4 bowl games. And now let's go to the 1985 depth chart. At inside linebacker, number 53, a senior from Panama City, Florida, David Basil. And right beside him at the rover position, number 15, a sophomore from Little Rock, Stephen Jones. Jones had great games and wins over Ole Miss and Houston, but his best game was here at War Memorial Stadium on September the 28th, 1985, against New Mexico State, when he led the Razorback defense as he recorded 2 sacks and broke up a pass. Following the 1985 regular season, the Hogs beat Arizona State 18-17 in the Holiday Bowl in San Diego. Following the 1986 regular season, Stephen was a starting linebacker for the Razorbacks in the Orange Bowl against Oklahoma. I'm not going to mention the final score of that game. Stephen picked up his 4th letter in 1987 and, as previously mentioned, played in his 4th bowl game, winding up his career back in the Liberty Bowl in Memphis. In his final game, the Hogs led Georgia 17-7 after 3 quarters, but lost 20-17 on a field goal on the last play of the game. Stephen then graduated from the University of Arkansas in 1988 with a degree in chemical engineering and immediately went to work in the oil and gas business for JMC Exploration as an engineer. But on February the 25th, 1989, a former Razorback who wore number 61 and was the starting strong side offensive guard for the 1964 national champions just happened to buy the Dallas Cowboys. And all of you know the rest of the story. Super Bowl, January 1, 1993, Cowboys 52, Bills 17. Super Bowl, January 30, 1994, Cowboys 30, Bills 13. Super Bowl, January 28, 1996, Cowboys 27, Steelers 17. Then last season, following the Cowboys' 12-4 regular season finish and a 2014 NFC Eastern Division title, Stephen and Jerry Jones were named the co-recipients of the NFL Executive of the Year Award as presented by Sports Illustrated's Monday Morning Quarterback. And lastly, earlier this year, on February the 27th to be exact, Stephen was here in Little Rock at the State House Convention Center and was inducted into the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame. He currently serves as Chief Operating Officer, Executive Vice President, and Director of Player Personnel for the Dallas Cowboys, and he is President of AT&T Stadium. Also, he's a member of the NFL's prestigious Competition Committee and the New Stadium Committee. That's a long way from when he was All-State quarterback for the Catholic High Rockets. Here's Razorback number 15, Stephen Jones.
Thank you. I'm going to take him with me wherever I go. I needed him when I was trying to get Karen away from Basil. What Basil doesn't understand is I didn't tell a lot of people how successful my father was, but I did tell Karen when she was, because Basil had me on the looks, and I think he still does. I'll give him that. By the way, you can come to work for us. We don't discriminate people in court cases. We'll let you come on down. In all seriousness, I don't know whether it was, I think Andrew's here. I think he placed a call too, and David, and I didn't look to see that the Hogs were playing Alabama and the Cowboys were playing New England. It's a tough deal to come in here and talk about football after two tough things, and the game sounded pretty familiar. I think our defense kind of stepped up and had a really nice first half, and I think we put it on Brady about 5 times, 5 sacks, and a lot to look forward to with that defense right there. But, still got a little ways to go there, but we got reinforcements on the way and feel good about that. Since it is tough to talk football, and I will eventually get back around to that, one thing I thought I'd visit with you a little bit is my road, and you did steal a little of my material. I was actually going to confess up to some of those things that I've had some missteps along the way. But you had more. You kept them underneath. But in all seriousness, I was very fortunate growing up. Had a wonderful family. My brother's obviously sitting here supporting me. I can't say enough about him. But my mom and dad were unique. And, we had a love for sports from the get-go. I grew up as a Razorback fan. You mentioned I wanted to be a Razorback all my life. I grew up going to the games. And my father was my coach in the YMCA. And I didn't know how hard he was trying at the time, but he worked in Oklahoma City, and he would actually be drawing up plays in Oklahoma City before practice. He'd shoot over, make practice, fly back to Oklahoma City, go back to work the rest of the week, and then come in and coach our games. And, boy, I look back on that now and know how special that was. And what I didn't know was we were creating a monster. About that time, Coach Jones, as he's referred to. And so he really was into it. And as a matter of fact, we had a lady who worked at our house. And we'd been beat the year before, I think his First National Bank, and I think Coach Pryor, or Senator Pryor, sponsored that team. And, boy, they whipped our tail, and Jerry didn't like it a bit. And we were trying to figure out how to beat them the next year. And there's this lady in our house. She says, well, I see Stephen gets dressed up to go to football every weekend. And you're coaching him. He goes, I got a nephew that I think he'd like to play football. He's never played, but I think he'd like to play. Boy, Dad, I had the lady working for us. She's about 6'2". She's about, I won't tell her weight, but she was a little heavier. And he says, well, tell me about him. Well, he's bigger than Stephen. Boy, is he fast. And Jerry said, well, why don't we try to get him signed up? Well, I'll never forget. We got him signed up, Kenneth Turner, and we'd drive 30 minutes South Little Rock, pick him up. Boy, I dreaded the drive, and then we'd go to practice. Well, this guy could run the football. He had to learn how to do it. I think the first time he ever got tackled, he took off his helmet and started beating the other guys because he thought they were trying to hurt him, but we taught him that way to go to work, and we ended up beating First National Bank and winning the championship. So 2 things were created: Jerry Jones, the coach, and Jerry Jones, the general manager. I'll also, and so he was very proud of that. I think more proud than I was. We actually went over to Memphis and played in the Friendship Bowl, and we didn't get that done. And I wasn't exactly a thrower at that time. I was kind of a runner the way we did it, and couldn't hit a guy at the end. And I think he liked to kill me because the guy was wide open, and if I hit him, we win the game. But he had to pull back to keep from killing me, I think, at that point. But anyway, we had so many wonderful times, and that passes along because I've coached my kids. I've got 3 daughters. First of all, I got a wonderful wife in Karen, which David mentioned, and there's no one more special than her. She reminds me so much of her. My mother, I think, truthfully, she could have done anything she wanted, but she dedicates her life to our kids. And I coached all my kids. My girls were soccer players. And show you what a good coach I was. About 10th grade, each one of them retired. And they said, Dad, we love sports, but we want to be cheerleaders and dancers. And you need to get over that. You got your son, John Stephen. He can be your jock. So anyway, I ran them out of it because I was too intense with them. They weren't gonna continue down that road. But John Stephen has just been a joy to coach, the same thing. And I was speaking to a group about like this at a YMCA function. And we were having a good time talking about the Y, and we were talking about the Cowboys, and we were actually in the hunt and had I think at that time we were playing the Giants and needed it to go to the playoffs. And then we had this championship game coming up for my son, John Stephen. And so they were sitting there visiting about the team, and people were asking me, and they said, well, you know, we just heard you tell that story about your son and what you were doing to get the team ready, and then you were talking about the Cowboys, and something tells me you might rather win that game with John Stephen than you would the Cowboys beat the Giants. I looked at him and I said, if you cut me open, you're probably right. So anyway, it's a family tradition to do that, and we've certainly enjoyed our family, and you know, it makes such a big difference when you have people around you. I look around this room, you know, I won't be able to mention them all, but I see Sheffield Nelson. What a great mentor of mine. He let me go on hunting trips with him and Dad when I was about 16. And sometimes Jerry'd have to cancel, and he'd take me anyway. And learned a lot from him. I see Steve Stracely over there, who obviously followed in the footsteps of one of my great mentors, Father Tribute. And had so many great memories over there. And as you mentioned, what sent me to Catholic was that episode where I had a few friends. And we were decided we'd experiment with a little beer for the school dance. And, of course, by the time we made it to the school dance, we couldn't see. And we all ended up in trouble, and my mom and dad were gone. And when they got home, they got the news. And, of course, Mother was horrified. Where have we gone wrong? We've raised them wrong. And, of course, Dad says, well, I got an idea. I'm going to take him up to Arkansas, and we're going to fix this. She goes, you're going to do what? You're going to reward him for this terrible behavior? He's suspended for school for 3 days, and instead of making him sit at home and have punishment, you're going to take him up to Arkansas. And he said, we'll see how this goes. So anyway, we rolled the clock forward. Sure enough, he said exactly that. If you want this, and which I did, I love football. He said, you're going to have to straighten up. And he said, there's no room in sports at your age for drinking and partying. You've got to be dedicated. And so one of the things we decided was that he said, the other thing I want you to do is we're going to move schools. He said, obviously you need a little stricter environment. There's this guy, Father Tribute, over there who I want you to go to school. So we go over there, and sure enough, I met Father Tribute, and happens to be like my second father. I just adore him. I love him. I miss him. We've all probably had run-ins with Father Tribune. I will say this haircut I'm sporting right here is probably from a few of those 5-speeds he gave me running around the school there. And I think he pulled half of it out before I ever got to be 22. But anyway, he's just, as we all know, at the end of the day, you have resources, but then you have men who are builders of young men. And, of course, he's at the top of the list. And certainly I give a lot of credit for anything I've ever done halfway well in life to Father Tribune. But anyway, he said, you're going to go to school over there. And said, one of the things I want you to do is I want you to make good grades. And he said, if you want to be in sports and want to go to Arkansas, you're going to have a workout regimen. He said, my father made me have a job. And he said, I'm not going to require that of you. He said, I used to work at the grocery store. But he said, you're going to work out in the summers. You're going to work out every day. You're going to start at 9 in the morning. I don't want to see you at home. You're going to work out. You're going to run. You're going to lift weights. You're going to throw the ball. Sure enough, I was pretty good at it. And rolled the clock forward. One day, one summer, I thought Dad was out of town. And I had some guys who'd throw with me and run bleachers with me. And boy, it was about noon. It was hot. And one of the guys said, hey, Susie called. Said a lot of the girls are wanting to go swimming. Said, what do you think about maybe going over to your house and having a little pool party? Didn't you say your parents were gone? I said, yeah, they are. I said, we've been working hard. We deserve a break. So, boy, roll the clock forward. We're all out in the pool. The music's going. We're laughing. We're grinning. Sure enough, Mother shows up. She's not that mad. Mother wasn't as into it. She goes, you better hope your father doesn't show up. She goes, that'd be a problem. I go, I got it, but we'll be good. I said, we got a deal. So we're still out there swimming around. Well, all of a sudden, there's about 12 of us, and everything gets quiet. Dead quiet. Well, I'm still just laughing. Everybody's, I'm going. I go. I turn around, and there's my father in his suit, and he's, I'm going, oh no. I said, the one time, I said, he's going to be thinking I do this every day. So I go up and he said, go get your suit on. I said, sir, and he goes, what you wear to church on Sundays, go get your suit on. I said, yes, sir. I said, well, what are we doing? He goes, we're going for a job interview. So, boy, I go up, God, how did this happen? I said, I had it going good. Matter of fact, all my buddies were working at a pizza joint, and I had jobs doing pizza and all this. Of course, I was getting to skip all that, and I did have it good. And so I come down, and I said, well, where are we going? He goes, we're going to Wendy's. Mr. Hammer's up there. He's waiting on you. And he said, I think a little burger flipping would do you some good. He said, rest of summer, that's what we're going to do. He said, hopefully he'll hire you the way you're acting these days. He said, but we'll go sit in there with Mr. Hammer and see what we got. So, boy, we sit in there, and, boy, there is Mr. Hammer sitting at the Wendy's right there at Rodney Parham. I go in there, how you doing, Mr. Hammer? He goes, oh, so you want to work, son? I go, yes, sir. Well, I was enthusiastic, but not. And so he said, well, you want to work? I said, yes, sir, I want to work. And he goes, you're a young guy. He goes, but I think we can make, somewhere between 6 and 8 hours worth a day for you. He goes, you can get up here about 9, 10 o'clock, and you can make sure all the grills are clean and do a lot of that type of work. And you'll learn over time how we do the burgers and how we do the fries. And yes, sir, I know I can. So, boy, there we go. And he goes, well, we got a deal. And he goes, well, don't you want to know what you're getting paid? I said, well, yes, sir. And he goes, well, we'll make minimum wage. And he goes, this will be a good experience for you. Jerry goes, yes, this will be great for Steve. He goes, fired up. So, boy, we walk out the door, and, boy, I'm riding home. He goes, well, you fired up? And I go, no, sir. And we get on home while we're talking, and he goes, in life you got to understand you got to be accountable, and you and I had a deal. He goes, I know it's a long, long day of working out, but he said, I got to be able to trust you. And he said, on top of that, if you really want to get accomplished what you want to accomplish, then you got to stick with those things. And I said, yes, sir. So he said, well, in the morning, he said, get up, and we're going to get after it. This will be good for you. He said, you can do your workout after work, and you can probably work out from 6 to 8, 6 to 9 at night. And I'm thinking, How am I going to see my girlfriend if I got to work out from 6 to 9? And so, anyway, I get ready to go the next morning, and I come down, and I'm getting ready to go to Wendy's, and my dad's got my workout gear sitting there on the table. He goes, bet you'd kind of like to put this on, wouldn't you? I said, yes, sir, I would. He goes, one more chance. He goes, one more chance. And boy, sure enough, he didn't ever catch my butt back at that house. Whenever anyone ever said, you want to go swimming? Not at my house. Not at my But anyway, it was obviously a lot of good lessons in there. Father Trabue did so many wonderful things. He caught me in some things as well. I thought I deserved a hot lunch or two along the way, and he'd catch me. And one day we were out having a little lunch and coming back through the line, and Colonel Henley was out there working the ROTC, and a buddy of mine had said, you know, we ought to have a hot lunch before the game tonight. And why don't you sneak out of here during lunch and go to Wendy's? And boy, he comes weaving through, and there's Colonel Henley. He goes, get down, Jones, get down. Shoot, Colonel Henley's out there. He stops Massey, and boy, there I sit in the floorboard of the car. Oh, what do we have here? Mr. Jones. You always ride in the floorboard? He goes, hand over the keys. So we go in to see Father Trabue, and I hadn't gotten in a lot of trouble with Father. But, boy, here we sit. There's Father Trabue, and tell he's terribly disappointed, which I hated to do to him. And, you know, usually your first little bit of trouble you get into, it's an hour of detention or maybe 2 or 3, but, you know, never all day. And he goes, you know, Stephen, and Massey, you too. But he goes, you know, people know you're one of my favorites. And he goes, you know, I'm going to have to throw the book at you on this one. I go, yes, sir. I go, what'd you have in mind? And he goes, I think all day Saturday work would be great. And I said, okay. Guess I'll just have to take it. So sure enough, boy, we're out there at 7 o'clock in the morning raking leaves. Massey and I look at each other. Boy, it's about noon. We're getting hungry. And I said, boy, we got 3 or 4 more hours left of this. This is long. About that time, boy, Father Trabue waves us up. And he goes, was that hot lunch worth it? No, sir. No, sir. Do you really think you're special enough? You should be the only kid in school having a hot lunch? No, sir. No, sir. He goes, well, why don't I take you and Massey for a hot lunch? But you better not breathe a word that I let you out of this all-day workout. I said, you got a deal. You got a deal. So anyway, we, you know, those days were wonderful. And then, you know, it was also mentioned that, you know, one of the things Jerry wanted me to do was go to Princeton. And when I was playing football, I was, you know, fortunate enough because he pushed it. And believe it or not, I did listen some to him. I paid my price a little bit along the way, but I did listen to him, and I did have a nice grade point average coming out of Catholic. And Princeton was interested in me coming to play football, and the coach came down. I actually stayed at the house, and then we went to visit. And a quick side note with that, when we went up there, one of the things the coach said was that you might want to think about coming up here. Brooke Shields is going to be enrolling up here as a freshman. And, of course, that was that time, I guess Blue Lagoon or one of those. And I said, whoo, Brooke Shields. Karen might would have had to run for her money. But anyway, we went up there, and then we went up to campus, and, you know, Jerry was just dead set. He goes, we're finally going to have a family member, you know, go to the Ivy Leagues. And I looked at Dad and said, boy, I'm just not that fired up about going up there. I went up there, I saw it, I liked it, but, you know, I'd been to Razorback games, 60,000, and the coach did say, he goes, you know, at Catholic, we'd play over at War Memorial, and we'd have 6, 7, 8,000 people watch you for a high school game. And he said, you won't have this many watching you at Princeton. He goes, you'll be lucky to have that. And so anyway, I finally told Jerry, I said, look, Dad, I said, last I checked, Coach Holtz offered me a scholarship. I said, I think I could go, couldn't I, without you having to pay for it. I can go to Arkansas. Boy, he didn't like that a bit. He said, well, what do you mean? I go, well, you know, you raised me. You took me to all these games with my grandfathers, and we lived and died with the Hogs, listened to them on the radio. I said, I'm just dead set on being a Razorback. And he goes, well, you know, you'll have a better chance to play. Oh, by the way, as it turns out, Jason Garrett was a freshman that year. So I still would have been a safety at Princeton. I think he would have gotten me too at quarterback. But anyway, we finally made this deal. He said, well, I got a deal. He could tell I was really dead set on being a Razorback. And he said, why don't we go do a little figuring on what would be a good challenge for you academically at Arkansas? And if you'll do that, we'll have a deal. I go, yeah, business would that'd be good. You're a good businessman. I want to do business. Because I wasn't thinking business. And I said, well, what'd you have in mind? And he said, well, I'm in the oil business. Why don't we check on a little petroleum engineer? That's what his partner was, Mike McCoy. Well, I'd heard a little bit about engineering, not a lot, but I did hear it wasn't easy. And so, boy, we go up there and we visit Arkansas and we go to the business school, but then we go to the engineering school. Well, no petroleum engineer at Arkansas, at the university, but there was chemical. And the guy did say, but, Stephen, I hope you're committed. He said, this is the hardest major on campus, and it takes a lot of time. I went, whew. And he said, that was our deal, wasn't it, Stephen? I said, okay, I'll be a chemical engineer. Boy, about 2 years into it, I thought, golly, I think I would have rather gone to Princeton. And I went and talked to my advisor. I said, is there any place I could transfer, maybe a different type of engineering? He goes, boy, you're knee deep in this. I said, I'll just stick it out. Now, I don't know that I wasn't an academic all Southwest Conference, but I made it through chemical engineering. But, of course, all those things are, things that are so important. Along the way, you have people take care of you. And I had the coach who recruited me to the University of Arkansas walk up here this afternoon, Coach Turner. I think you're in here somewhere. There you are, Coach Turner. He recruited me and was my main coach. And so anyway, we just adored Coach Turner, but he was the special teams coach. He was the tight ends coach. He coached one of my best friends, Jim Kessinger, but he was also the special teams guy. And turned out I was no great shakes. I was always close, but never quite there as far as being a great player at Arkansas. But I could cover a kick, and I could block on a kick. And Coach Turner was just a great coach, and I actually took a lot of pride in it because of Coach Turner. We all know Coach Broyles and how much he stressed special teams. And Coach Turner and Coach Hatfield did as well. And so anyway, just had just a ball there and just have so much respect for Coach Turner. And anyway, one night, I'll never forget this because Coach Turner let me up and let a couple other of us up. And it was a Thursday night, and we had a curfew. And so it was me, and I don't know if you remember great receiver James Shebist, who is actually the special teams coach at Memphis and doing a hell of a job there. And me and Jim Kessinger, we'd been out on a Thursday night, and a couple things had gotten our attention, and, well, it was time to go home. About 10:30, I think we had a 10:30, 11 o'clock curfew. Had another friend out there with us. It turned out to be my brother-in-law, Joe Hickman. And he said, God, guys, he said, it's just getting started. He said, it's going to be a big night. So, boy, I looked over at Jim and James. Oh, man, what are we going to do? I said, Coach Turner has curfew tonight. He said, he trusts us. He won't circle back around. Why don't we just kind of jump in our beds, keep our clothes on, and Joe will wait in the car down there, and we'll just, when Coach Turner comes in, act tired and say, hey, Coach, how you doing? So, boy, sure enough, we'd in there and knock, knock. Hey, Coach, door's open. Just making sure you're asleep. Oh, yeah, just had a long day. I'm getting on to sleep. Okay. He said, we got to stay in here, don't we? And I said, oh, yeah. I said, know the rules. So, boy, we couldn't wait to get back because we were dying to get back in the middle of that action. And so, boy, we couldn't wait long enough. I finally said, surely he's out of here. He's checked all these rooms. It's been 15 minutes. So, man, I kind of peek open that door, and I'm looking. Boy, the coast looks clear. Of course, there were no cell phones in that time. I could see my roommate, Kessinger and Shebist, they roomed together. They kind of blinked their light, kind of give the thumbs up. So, man, I get down on my knees and open that door, start crawling. Boy, I'm crawling because you didn't want anyone seeing you. Boy, around this corner, I'm crawling, and bam, I hit my head. Kind of look, and there's a shoe I'm looking at. There's Coach Turner. He said, get your you-know-what back, and I go, are you going to tell Coach Hatfield? If you get in that room and stay in that room, I won't tell Coach Hatfield. And, of course, we all know what would have happened had he told Coach Hatfield. He had about zero tolerance. But, those are the things that, you have to have people like that give you a chance. And that would have been tough on your reputation because there probably would have been a suspension involved, the whole 9 yards. And, those type of things you never forget, people who really look after you and take care of you. I had another one, one of the things that I loved about sports is I've been so lucky to be involved with special people, whether it's Coach Holtz, who I actually got to play a year for, and he was extreme. You remember David, the old fourth quarter. He'd have to get up, I think at 6 in the morning, and that was my freshman year. And boy, it certainly made you tough because you had to go to fourth quarter at 6 in the morning, then you had to make all your classes. And I think they finally quit that because so many people just went right back to bed and stayed in bed till about noon. But boy, we'd go through these fourth quarters, and I'll never forget, I don't think Bobby Joe Edmonds is here, but I did see him at Arkansas last week. And boy, Bobby Joe was a great player for us. He ended up playing, I think, for Seattle and return kicks and return kickoffs, and great player for us. I think one game he returned a punt for a touchdown, caught a touchdown, and ran one in. Well, boy, we're down there in the fourth quarter, and there's people throwing up, dying, and I'm dying. Can barely talk. And, boy, right there beside me, there's Bobby Joe. How you doing, Jones? Boy, everybody goes, and I go, dang, man, how you doing this? I go, I know you like to go out and have fun, and how you just getting through this? He goes, man, it's just a cakewalk for me. I said, well, you're not even sweating. He said, Jones, he said, I don't sweat, I glow. And so if you knew Bobby Joe, you'd understand that. But that's when I found out probably there were going to be a lot better athletes and a lot more well-conditioned guys who could get it done better than me. But, those are the things in life that, make a difference. And obviously Coach Holtz was an amazing coach. And unfortunately, I caught him at the tail end of it. And, but he did have so many great things to pass along to young men. Obviously, Coach Hatfield, me having a coach like Coach Turner and Coach Henshaw were all things that I'll never forget. And I'm just such a firm believer. And I see Cale Gober sitting here. And that's why we're so involved in the Razorbacks. And one of the things that hit home with us was the Jones Wellness Center. And it made such sense to us, especially Jerry and I, because at the end of the day, there's only about 5% of the athletes that go to Arkansas that are ever going to be professionals, that are going to go on and be Darren McFadden or Felix Jones or Steve Atwater. And what they're really going to do is they're going to go on and try to be successful in life. And I'm such a firm believer that if you'll couple that education that you get at Arkansas and you do it the right way, and you couple that with what you learn on the fields, the adversity, the heartbreak, the thrill of victory, then you can go on and be wildly successful. And such a big believer in what Cale's doing, what our university's doing up there. I know so many in this room have given. If you hadn't, Cale, I'm doing my part. Then see Cale over here, and I tell you what, it makes you feel so good. I can tell you, Jerry, our family, no one feels better about that gift than we do. After it was all said and done, we even felt better. And so I urge you, if you hadn't participated in the campaign up there, to see Cale. There's some special things to do. The other thing I'd say to you, moving on to the Cowboys, is just, you have to pinch yourself. And I see guys all the time who love the game of football. They love pro sports. They love the NFL. They love to play fantasy football. Well, I get to play fantasy football every day for real, and I just, you're just so thankful for it. And I've gotten to be around a lot of great men, as I mentioned. You talk about the Bill Parcells of the world, the Jimmy Johnsons, the Barry Switzers. Those are all Hall of Fame type coaches. And those are guys that I got to learn from. I will say that Bill's one of my favorites. He always had, when I first got there, his deal was he wanted to meet with me every morning at 8 o'clock. And he wanted to go over the team, what was on the agenda. And at that time, we were building AT&T Stadium. And it was a big project. And, of course, Jerry was involved, Charlotte, my parents. We were selling. We were trying to get sponsors. We were trying to get suite holders, seat holders. And, we really had our work cut out for us. And we never told Bill, but that was a big reason because he's such a big personality that Jerry agreed to hire him because we needed to win to help get that vote too. And I'll never forget, every morning I'd walk in there and I'd either be dressed about like this because I had meetings that day on the stadium, or sometimes I'd come in a little more casual. Well, he had a nickname for me. When I walked in like this, he goes, Stadium Steve. He goes, you're working on things that aren't important to Bill. He said, I want your focus on new players, personnel, making us better on the field. If you want to sell that stadium, then go to work on things that are important to Bill, not Stadium Steve. So anyway, he was a classic, and there were, so many great memories we had with him. He'd be saying right now, if he gave me a call, which I actually do get to talk to Bill 2 or 3 times a year, but he used to always accuse Jerry of being too optimistic. And, he'd get after us for that. He said, boy, you can't put the cart before the horse. I know what he'd call right now. He'd say, well, I bet Jerry's not planning the parade route for the Super Bowl right about now after these 3 tough losses you've had. And when we first had Tony, he had his first couple of big games. He'd laugh at Jerry and look over at him and said, what are you going to do? Are you designing the bus for Romo to put him in the Hall of Fame? He goes, come on now, we got to keep things in perspective here. But he was special. Barry was special. He had such a way with players. Jimmy, obviously, winning the 2 Super Bowls there, had his way and was so lucky to get to work with these guys and work with so many great executives over the years. The George Hayeses of the world, who lived right here in Little Rock, was one of the true great salesmen and marketers who I'll never forget. You just get so fortunate to get to work with so many neat people. And, before I close here, what are we looking at on time, Dave? About 5 minutes? Well, why don't we do this? What I will say is I would touch base real quickly just to tweak you a little bit. We do like our football team. I think reinforcements are on the way. We showed a little bit about what we're about on defense. We get Randall Gregory back, who's a great pass rusher. He's really special, and he'll join Hardy, and I really think we can win games with our defense, and Dez is right behind him. Don't be surprised if we think about a quarterback change right about now with Castle. No one knows about the quarterback situation more than I, and I've been lucky to get to be the number 2 guy, and actually there's been some stories lately about maybe Jerry stepping back a little, and Rich asked, would he care if we did a few stories where I'd comment on that? And he said, no, I don't care as long as he says the right things. And I said, well, what'd you have in mind? And he said, that I'm not stepping back. And so last night, after these 3 straight losses, I told him, I'm glad I set the record straight. You hadn't stepped back. That's why. So you can take this heat right now. But in all fairness, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. We work so well together as a family, and I know you mentioned Charlotte. Just think the world of her. Obviously, she's prettier, smarter, and a better speaker. So I knew I had a high bar to hit here today, but my brother, obviously, there. We enjoy working together. We enjoy working with my father. We enjoy working with my mother. And my mother actually works a ton in this business. And, everybody's always wanting to say, well, what are things, what's going to happen next? Or are y'all starting to get ready? Well, as Jerry said, the plan's already in place. And, I will say this in closing. The last thing I worry about is following in his footsteps. What I do worry about is not being able to work with him. And I think we got something special. And I do appreciate you guys here today. I probably went a little over. I missed some things I was going to cover, but I don't know if we have time for a couple questions, but I appreciate you guys. It's great being here today.
We'll do just a couple minutes of questions. I've got the first two. How difficult is it in a day of social media, Stephen, when fans and media are really critical? How tough is it to hear that kind of stuff, number one? And number two, have you had a chance to watch much of the Razorbacks and your thoughts on Coach Bielema and where he's taking the program?
Well, first of all, the social media is a good question. My sister actually does our tweeting for us, and she made a comment once that she said, "I just don't think Jerry and Stephen are smart enough to tweet." And I fired back at her. I said, "I don't have enough idle time to tweet." And so, but in all seriousness, social media is something that's scary, and I think it's in our world. We deal with it. My kids tweet all the time. I do not tweet, and I worry about our players that tweet. I think there's no filter. I think whatever's in their brain goes to their fingers, and they hit send. And I think that a lot of these guys would like to have that back, but at the same time, it can be an unbelievable tool to be successful with, whether it's marketing, whether it's creating interest for our game. I do think it's something that we got to continue to work with it, but do it in a way that it gets better. Obviously, there was I live right there in Dallas, the Longhorn incident where a player was tweeting at halftime. I mean, there's no place for that. I mean, these coaches, and there's no tougher coach than Coach Strong. And if anyone would have thought that it wouldn't have happened, it would have been in his locker room. But there is a place for it. It's something that we have to work with. We have to continue to refine it and get better at. And I think we will. As far as the Razorbacks, no bigger fan of Coach Bielema than myself. I do think we're just right there. I think he's doing things the right way. I love the physicality that he's putting together. I mean, if you talk to our scouts, who are a great barometer of how things are going in around the country and especially the SEC, they really like what Coach Bielema is doing with our Razorbacks. He's building great fronts. You see, we're just that close every week, and you tweak it with a player here and a player there, and we can look up and we can have a great football team. So I'm a huge supporter, and I think we're lucky to have him, and I think the air is up in terms of my mind for the Razorbacks.
One question. Donnie from El Paso.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. What did you and your family think of Terry Bradshaw's rant from yesterday?
That's what they're paid to do, is to be critical. And when you're the Dallas Cowboys, then, whatever moves you make, whatever you do are going to be addressed. And, obviously they're picking a situation there that attention needs to be brought to it. And we're certainly not naive. At the end of the day, it's domestic violence, domestic abuse is very serious. We certainly don't condone it, but I think if you talk to the very people who live it and breathe it every day, they will tell you have to have redemption. If you want to be able to move forward and have a future, you've got to learn from it. You've got to totally feel like, hey, I'm done with that, and I'm going to move on to the next chapter. And obviously, I think to some degree, some of Greg Hardy's comments didn't necessarily seem that way. But I think there's a place for guys like that to be critical, and we certainly knew that when we signed Greg, that there was going to be people who would be critical, and we certainly accept that. And we certainly don't. I want everybody to know we don't have our head in the sand. That we're just doing it because he's a great player. Does it help? Of course it does. The players get a chance sometimes because they're a little better than the next guy. We all know that's how that works. But hopefully we, as the Dallas Cowboys, have things in place that'll help make Greg a better person, that we can educate him, that we have the infrastructure in place to continue to work with him. He certainly understands now when he speaks that it's different than when he was a Carolina Panther, that everything he says with the Dallas Cowboys is going to be followed, is going to be retweeted, is going to be looked at. And our goal is to take players who have struggles, because they all do. It's not just Greg Hardy. We have players from the top to the bottom that have struggles, whether it's mental health, whether it's substance abuse. Everybody has things that they're trying to overcome, and we hope that we put an infrastructure in place that will make young men better.
Awesome. Stephen Jones, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Stephen Jones, everybody. Mac Brown next week. Look forward to seeing you next week. For those of you who are 50-yard line members or sponsors to get your pictures, just come up to the side. Just remember.